How's it going, y'all? Time Smash MTG, and today we're here to talk about a little bit of MTG Standard. We are a little over a week into the new Standard season now. I want to talk about 5 things you can keep in mind while playing this new Standard. Say if you're a week late getting to the format, maybe you're playing, you're just looking for some tips and tricks to kind of get you around. I wanted to give you 5 tips to kind of look out for and consider whenever you're building your decks for MTG Standard. Lots of new stuff to play, a lot of very cool, very neat archetypes here. So let's go ahead and quit wasting time and get right into it. Let's go. So point number 1 to make here is X1s are in a really, really bad spot right now. Traditionally, especially early into the season, aggro is the way to go. You want to be playing like mono red and some really aggressive shells like that. But right now, it's not really a good time for it. For one, there's things like Shambling Gas are everywhere. There's Eye Twitches, which are just begging to trade with you and get card advantage there. Spikefield Hazards are even been played. There's all kinds of little things on the other side of the battlefield that really, really punish X1s. You've even got people playing Meat Massacres where just on, for 3 mana they can wipe all of your X1s off the battlefield. So it's a really bad time to be playing X1s compared to when you usually could. Just so many things. There's Fireblade charges as well. I could go off and just name a bunch of cards and names. But compared to like usual starts of new standard seasons, this is not a good time to be playing aggro right now. It's weird. It's like a mid-rangey format, but there's also a lot of board wipes on the other side. It's really strange. And typically, when the meta's like this, you want to be able to get under it. You want to be super aggressive and be really, really fast. But the aggro decks just really aren't built that way right now. Like the fastest decks out there are probably still like just Gruul aggro, whether it be werewolves or just like the Magda kind of ramp you up way up there kind of shells. But they're not really like aggressive in the traditional sense that mono red is. And I think a large part of that really is the X1s are really bad right now. So anytime I see people, especially in the 2-drop slot, if you're trying to play things like Lotus Cobra and things of that nature, you're just asking to get blown out. There's Deadly Disputes. So one of the more common things that I see people do is they'll play something like a Lotus Cobra. Then on their end step, their opponent just Deadly Disputes their Shambling Gas, kills that Lotus Cobra. Then they're still netting 2 cards and a treasure token for it. Like, it's such a blowout. So if you're building your deck, be careful of those X1s. Not a good spot right now. Tip number 2 is if you played a lot of Standard 2022, don't think you can just take any kind of deck that was really good in there and start running with it. Not really the case anymore. Which is kind of wild and actually very appreciated. I thought maybe that would kind of stale the meta out because people would already kind of have it semi-solved. But you can play mono green right now, but it's like, okay, it's definitely not top of the tier like it was. Is it Dragons? It's a thing you can play, but I don't think it's like super good right now. It's interesting. There's just so many playable decks that you can play, but the tier and the meta from Standard 2022 is kind of out the window now because there's so many new things that you can do. So that's just a tribute to this set. Well done. A lot of different cool things you can do there. But if you're planning to come in straight from Standard 2022, import that deck and get the smashing, you're probably not going to have a lot of success. Tip number 3, and probably the biggest one, I'm sure if you played this standard, you'll know what I'm talking about here, but you either need to be playing Blood on the Snow or need to have a way to get around Blood on the Snow, because that card is everywhere and it is strong. And it's really nice because Blood on the Snow allows you, the traditional control shells, they can play Blood on the Snow and have it as a board wipe and they're good to go there. But as you're seeing, it's a lot of either Orzhov mid-range or maybe Dimir kind of stuff, where it's like a Dimir control, but still mid-range. Even Golgari's doing a lot of different stuff there. But all these decks, they're just able to play their creatures, kind of have their mid-rangey beat-down plan, but still not be afraid to wipe the board on their side of the field and then get back a big creature, a Lolth. I've seen some decks, like, I've played Arlen and Jund stuff. Just so many ways that you can abuse Blood on the Snow. So if you're not going to be playing Blood on the Snow, you need to either be resilient to it, have ways to counter it, or make sure you can exile that graveyard so they're not getting anything back. And if you are playing Blood on the Snow, good, you're probably making the right choice. I think it's the most impactful card in Standard right now. There's Blood on the Snow everywhere, and if you're not playing it, you better have a plan for it. Tip number 4 here, not really a tip, but something to just be aware of. If you're looking at like MTG Melee and all these kind of tournaments for deck lists, there's not really an established meta quite yet that's super, super strong, and that's the beauty of this. And granted, we're barely a week into Standard. Maybe this will be a different conversation in a week or two. But right now, everything seems to be viable. Like every single thing I pick up, I'm getting some wins with it. I'm doing okay. I'm not seeing anything completely broken. There's some cool strategies out there. There's some good cards. Like obviously there's some cards that are better than others. But there's not one card where it's like, oh, I have to play this in every single deck. Or, oh, this is the premier tier 1 deck. This is the best thing to be doing. It doesn't really exist right now. There's so many different things out there to watch out for. It's a beautiful time in Standard. So if you're brewing, do not be afraid to try new things. I think the best deck is still yet to be found, and somebody's out there trying to find it. It's no surprise people like Crokies and all these people who stream all the time are just throwing new stuff at the wall and going crazy with it because they have, their minds are meant to brew like that. and people kind of just follow what they do. So I think the best thing to do is still out there. So if you're a brewer, you're somebody with a more kind of, off the beaten path kind of mindset, don't be afraid to try something new because it very well may work. Last tip here, I would say, is things like disdainful strokes and counter spells are a lot better now. I don't see a lot of people playing them, and part of that's because there are a lot of creature decks going around, and you don't want to be caught up. And it's always that really bad feeling when you just counter one thing and they slam 2 more creatures on you, or you're holding these counter spells and they've got a full board and you need some actual interaction there. But so many things right now. You still see a lot of orange epiphanies. Ren and 7 is everywhere. Like I said, blowing the snow. Tempo kind of decks may be a thing to look forward to right now, but I don't see a lot of people trying. Obviously there's like the Is It Delver kind of stuff, which has seemed to see mixed results for a lot of people. But I think like some kind of deck, like I know, and this is me talking out my butt, maybe I'll brew this after I get done, but something like a mid-rangey, tempo-ish kind of deck, by having things like Decisive Denial, where you have the option to counter something or fight. You have your Malevolent Hermit, which can counter stuff and be just spell pierce there. Have something that can kind of be a beatdown deck, but also counter magic, I think is really good right now. These Ren and 7s are everywhere, and they're really hard to get rid of. It's just, I don't know, there's a lot of just unique things about this meta that there haven't really been before. And I don't even know where I'm really getting with this. I guess I'm just trying to say, make sure that you have your counter magic available as some kind of option if you're able to do that. And if not, just have ways to punish these expensive decks. I see a lot of people, not enough people are playing things like Redain, like in Mono White, for instance, because there's so many things like at above 4 mana. It's kind of crazy. So making their Seeker's Chariot cost 6, their Ren at 7 cost 7. Things like Redain, Elite Spellbinder, there's a lot of these kind of taxing cards I think aren't seeing the play they should. So if you're not in blue, get those Redains, get those Elite Spellbinders out. If you're playing blue, get some of the counter spells, baby, and we can start all these cards that you're so afraid of, all these decks that require you to get to all this mana. It won't be an issue if you just counter their stuff, dude. Easy peasy. That's what I got. I know this is maybe just kind of rambly and me talking out my butt, but I do think it's important to know, especially the things like the X1s. That was a big thing when I started out. I was trying to be super hyper aggressive with stuff like Mono Red and things like that, and I just came to realize like things like Falcon Wrath Pit Fighter just feel really bad in the meta right now. Like there's so many things that just kind of stonewall it and make you feel real dumb for playing it. So be careful when you're brewing there. A lot of brewing space in this meta right now. This standard is fantastic thus far, and I'm really enjoying it what limited time I've got to play it. So if you're out there and you got a sick little brew you're playing, let me know what it is. I'm curious, excited to know. So that's all we got here, y'all. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the support. We'll see you next time with some more gameplay. Let's go.